Everybody, sorry I'm so late.
Is now joining.
Mr. Bailey, I think you were in the meeting twice. I just muted you both. It looks like it's resolving itself. Try unmuting yourself and talking, see if it comes through clean. Mr. Bailey, if you can unmute yourself, make sure you're still here.
Is that *6 on his phone?
He's on his computer. He'd be
Oh, he
looking at
is.
the microphone icon with the line through it.
I can't see him.
He's a guest too, just like me.
Oh, here he is trying to join again. I'm afraid he's in the meeting twice.
Okay, that's what happened last week. I was getting a double echo last week.
Okay.
I got two Georges on my screen.
Yeah, I think it's okay that you're in the meeting twice because we have say something real quick, George, so I know which one you're in with.
All right, I'm in with this one here.
Okay, I'll remove the other one. Now try continuing to talk, see if we can still hear you.
Can you?
Yep, that's perfect. Okay, Madam Chair, that seems to be resolved. I think we're ready to get started whenever you are.
Very good.
My camera won't come on.
That's okay. We can hear you. I'm just gonna, I need you to be patient with us when you do want to speak. So, welcome everyone to the July 13th, 2020 Select Board meeting. Please be sure that any of your background noise, phones, things like that are turned down or placed in vibrate mode, something like that, so that they don't interrupt the meeting. At this time, could you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Remind me to do roll call because I forgot that last week and had to go back and revisit it. Emergency provisions. As chair of the Barrington Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that while there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the emergency order, you can in fact join by phone participation, dialing 1-603-664-0240 and entering conference ID 748-817-934#, or by video participation at a link of bit.ly/BARR/SB200713. We've provided public notice previously for this meeting. Instructions for the meeting have been provided on the town website at www.barrington.newhampshire.gov. We are providing this mechanism for the public to alert us should during the meeting they have an access problem. You have 3 avenues of participation to alert us to a problem of your ability to hear or participate. You can call 664-0146. You can email administration@barrington.newhampshire.gov. You can use your chat feature in this virtual meeting app. We would adjourn the meeting if the public was unable to participate. Please note that all votes and attendance taken during this meeting will be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance, beginning with Select Person Air.
Daniel Air, I'm at 334 Old Concord Turnpike. I am by myself. There's no one to influence my vote. Thank you.
George Bailey, 19 Chesley Drive. I'm in the room by myself, and my wife is accompanying the house downstairs.
Andy?
Andy Knapp, 96 Lindsay Point Road. I am in the room by myself and currently home alone, but there will be 2 more back in the house shortly.
Jim Sakosha, 21 James Henry Drive. I'm here with my dog and nobody else is here.
Tracy Hardikoff, 48 Stone Farm Drive. I have a large Bernese Mountain Dog in the room with me. My husband is home in another room and will not be influencing my votes. Agenda.
Let's go.
We have, oh, and I should update, and a son who just walked in the door and will also not be influencing any votes. We have appointments today. I know that Connor, you had some revision to the agenda. You wanted to move a couple of items around for ease of the participants. Can you share with me what those were?
Yes, I believe we will have Phyllis LaPointe from the Barrington Women's Club joining us. So opposed to being last on the agenda, I'd like to move that up to the 4th appointment. And then I have under new business, the Working Dog Foundation grant opportunity. I'd like to move that up to the 2nd item under old business. Without objection.
Does anyone object to the movement of that, of those 2 agenda items?
Sakosha, no.
Bailey, no.
Air, no.
Nap, no.
Air?
No.
Very
No.
good, and I have no objection, so we'll do that. So I think the first thing we have is an attendance by Rick Perrin, who's going to give a 2020 census update for the town of Barrington based on participation rates at this time.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very, very pleased to be here. Thank you very much for having me in for the meeting. My name is Richard Perrin, P-E-R-R-I-N. I'm the partnership specialist in Rockingham County and Stratford County here in New Hampshire. My job to go around and tell people about the upcoming or the ongoing 2020 census. Three small points. I won't keep you more than 3 or 4 hours. Okay. Seriously, 3 small points. Right now, the census is ongoing. We're in the middle of it. It's been postponed or actually going on because of all the situations we've all been going through. The census is very easy to fill out. It took my family about 8 minutes to complete the form. Plus, it was a great teaching tool for the folks down the street. They had their children do it. Right now, there are 12 languages in addition to English that are available on the telephone and on about 59 other languages, non-English languages that are available online if anybody needs help. The census is very, very safe. The answers are confidential and secure. We take an oath to keep the information secure. Violators are subject to severe penalties. If I violate the term, I could be facing a prison term of up to 5 years and a fine of up to $250,000, neither of which, quite frankly, I can afford. So they never ask for your full Social Security, nothing to do with money or donations. There's nothing on behalf of a political party, no bank or credit card numbers, and no citizenship questions, which a lot of people do ask. And finally, the third point is very, very important that this information go out. Every city and town in New Hampshire has a point in this. It's because the federal government will distribute $675 billion to the states, right down to the local level. It'll take care of all your programs, to take school lunches, SNAP, roads, bridges, after-school programs, sports, things like that. That's where the money comes from. So the response rate directly affects the amount of funding that you in Barrington will receive. Right now in Barrington, the return rate is 65.3%, which is actually very, very good. The New Hampshire rate and the national rate are both tied at 62%, and right now you're 87th in the state out of 234. The final numbers in 2010, by the way, were about 75%, so we're working our way up there. Right now, Barrington has 2 tracks. The south of the Nippo Lake Golf Course is currently at 65%, and north of Route 9, you're approximately at 64%. So you're all right in the same neighborhood. 10 years ago, again, the rate was about 75% for those 2 tracks. So right now there are approximately 13 households filling out the census every day south of Route 9 and about 10.5 households filling out every day north of Route 9. We've so far filled out about 2,700 households. So right now we need your help. You folks are the trusted voices. We'd like to have you get the word out. Anything that you can do on your Facebook page, newsletter, any kind of emails that you send out, I'd be more than happy to send you a media toolkit. And in that is videos, some sample verses that you can use. You can use anything on a web page. Really, really would be great if you can do that. The minimum we'd like to get out is the 2020census.gov. If you go there and click on that, you can get to any kind of questions can be answered. You can respond right there. There are census maps that tell you all the response rates. And basically, there's a lot of information that you can use and use whatever you'd like, simply because I could give you 12 yards of information and you only need 1 yard. So please take a look at it. If you'd like to get that, I can send it along and send it to Tiffany. That's no problem. Happy to drop off free information. We have yard signs, we have pamphlets, we have display information, we have posters, all sorts of things that you can use any way you'd like in your homes, in the town, the schools, any way you'd like. So once again, the higher the census response rate, the higher the money will be coming to you in the terms of the $675 billion that will be distributed by the government. Any questions?
I don't think so. We would be glad to use social media accounts to push participation from our residents, understanding how important it is to receive funds from the federal government as it trickles down to us.
All right. I'll drop a quick email to Tiffany to make sure that you do have that toolkit that you can look at and go from there. You can use anything you'd like, and any other questions, concerns, but definitely feel free to get back to me anytime. Be happy to help you out.
Thank you very much, Richard.
I very much appreciate your time. Thank you, board. Have a great night.
Next up on our agenda, Karen Gould and conservation grant application for a 131-acre parcel.
And I believe we have Ms. Gould participating via phone. If you're muted, just press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. I heard her join, so oh, there we go.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Should I present?
Ready
Please,
when
Karen.
you are.
Okay, I just want to thank the Select Board for the opportunity to present my report for conservation of the 131-acre lot. Barrington, as a governing entity, a municipality, can make an application for funding from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services to Aquatic Resources Mediation, ARM. A conservation easement on the land will protect future drinking water, also 10 acres of wetlands, and would also provide protection of wildlife on the lake, such as eagles and loons, and numerous endangered species. The UNH recreation area, the Jeffrey Conservation Easement, and the Tamposi water supply border the land and acreage under consideration. In 1965, the land was predetermined, was scheduled for a 400-lot development with access to Mendham's Pond. It failed. In March 2018, after a 2-year legal battle, the Superior Court resolved and decreed the legal owners of the road, Holiday Lakeshore Drives, to Mendham's Pond, were the owners of that road. And over the years, the neighbors managed, maintained, graded, plowed, and improved the road with all kinds of necessary improvements and culverts. The neighbors in the associations, called Breezy Point, support protection of future drinking water, wetlands protection, and the flourishing wildlife breeding in the 10-acre beaver bog. Residents in the community are multi-generational and have been managing the road for 55 years. The state of New Hampshire has determined that the lot number of the land, 26131, is HAC. Basically, it's relevant and hydrologically for dozens of surrounding communities and future drinking water. Now, only about 24-25% of New Hampshire drinking water is protected. It is imperative we face this emerging crisis. The land has never been developed. There's not a septic system on it. There's not a washing machine. There's not a dishwasher. There are 5 year-round homes that exist on the land, and the population triples during the summer months. A recent survey of the virgin land by an herbal specialist found an abundance of herbal plants with medicinal health benefits, herbs with immune support, antiviral herbs, antifungal herbs, respiratory wellness, as well as herbs for mental health and well-being. Further research by soil experts could also be majorly beneficial as we expand our healthcare options for our country. So, at this time, our lives have changed drastically in the last 4 months. We now live, work, interact, meet, shop, and think differently because of this COVID crisis. We must not overlook the pending and predicted crisis, which is being felt globally, nationally, and potentially locally. The predicted impact of water shortages is a continuing message. The predicted impact of future drinking water looms heavily on our watch. As local leaders and representatives of our community, please listen and reassess our priorities. Future drinking water, the wetlands, which are a filter system for toxins in our water, future healthcare and future wildlife, as well as endangered species, are issues that are relevant, timely, and necessary for your attention as representatives of a community that needs to reboot, redirect what is most relevant for our survival. Grassroots representation impacts generations to come, not just our grandchildren, but also future generations. Surely, the time is now for our local leadership to reset priorities and acknowledge our dwindling resources: water, healthy environments, energy, wildlife, and endangered species. Maybe now may be the defining moment as we deal with this pandemic. Maybe now is the time to pivot. I really want to thank you for your time and your serious consideration. I am Karen Gould. I live in Barrington on Mendham's Pond, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from the select board at this time?
Bailey, no.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Knapp.
My question was in reviewing the documentation, Ms. Gould, one of the things that stood out to me was the town being on here as a holder of the conservation easement, but it providing no access for any of the public. Is that accurate?
What is of concern is the land borders UNH on two sides, where there is public access, there is transportation, and there's recreation. If I had public access, first of all, I cannot provide public access because I'm only one fraction ownership of the road. So the entire community is opposed to public access because they are more focused upon preservation and the priority of water and public access over land that has been determined to have water may be detrimental to that land. And also, on your agenda today or later on, you've got an issue about Stonehouse trash and management of that trash. That's of concern. And it's also a concern that the public access is not going to be a positive thing for the land in terms of even the potential medicinal herbs that are growing here, because of the fact that we have a 6,000-foot shoreline where all kinds of herbs are growing. besides the fact that you've got aquatic resources, you've got vegetative resources, and you've got endangered species, and on the land these species seem to be thriving. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Any other questions from the select board?
I don't know if it's so much a question, but it's more of a I guess it is kind of a question. If I'm wondering if the National Forest can do it, why wouldn't we be able to? And I look at it as, I think it's a great thing to conserve more land in the town that already has 30+% of its land conserved. So if we can conserve more, that's great. But I think making it so exclusive that people don't get to enjoy the conserved land makes it even more challenging in that regard to support putting town resources towards something that doesn't really gain any access or use for our town.
Well, the issue, sir, is that I'm not requesting any financial assistance. The aquatic resources mediation and the state is finding that the land is valuable for primarily the water and the wetlands, and there is public access around the entire area. So the issue of water is certainly more of a priority in the minds of the public than expanding public access further than it is at this point. And at this point, there's a problem even managing the public access and the trash problems at the Stone House Pond. So,
right, and
it's like, are we prioritizing public access over drinking water? Is that what we're really doing? Is that a timely thing to be doing at a time that we're in the middle of a crisis, and now we have a pending new crisis coming? And we only have 24% of the state is protected in its water supply?
I believe what I'm saying, ma'am, is you're not asking for any direct financial compensation, but by the use of intellectual property, you are using the financial resources of the town to accomplish what you're asking for, which I agree with and support. But what I'm looking for out of it is that the community as a whole ultimately would end up having the ability to move in and around the land, because as you said, there's medicinal herbs and there are mushroom hunters and all kinds of other people who appreciate that sort of thing around the area. And the land that you reference that is that you're referencing as with the trash issue, I would like to point out, is New Hampshire Fish and Game and is abutted by Selt property. So the town just has an easement to help support the maintenance of that should they not fulfill their obligation, which is what we would have with your property as well.
I'm merely asking for application. I'm not saying that the town would take responsibility. I'm asking for just the application, because as an owner of the land, a homeowner cannot make application. Application has to be made either by a municipality, a water system, or a land trust. Now, the land trust is overwhelmed right now with management of what they have. The water system is in Durham and is the Durham UNH water system. This is a piece of property that is surrounded by the Tamposi water system on the south, the Jeffrey conservation system on the, I think it's the north, and bordered by UNH on two sides. Therefore, it makes sense for this land to be protected. And this land definitely has been determined to have drinking water for dozens of surrounding communities. So I think drinking water is certainly prioritized in the minds of the people we represent, or I hope we represent. Drinking water is a priority over hiking.
So one thing I'd like to speak to and bring up is that the UNH recreation area is open to Barrington Town residents, and for a full family unit at a cost of $140 per season, they can access the swimming area, very inexpensive kayak rentals, and I don't think it's open this year because of COVID, but I certainly expect when the pandemic is over, it will be available. So there are two areas of access for Barrington residents that are not free, but even if we owned access to waterfront property, the cost to keep either a lifeguard trained in there or to maintain that property for people coming and going would certainly probably exceed the $140 per family for swimming access. So that's my opinion when it comes to, because I have also heard the requests of our townspeople that they'd like access to swimming, given that we have so many lakes in the town of Barrington, or so many bodies of water, I should say. So would anyone like to make a motion in reference to the potential to explore this grant?
Tracy, I'd like to make one more comment on that.
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm not making, I just want to be clear that I'm not making any reference to access swimming or anything like that. Just the openness for people to be able to move through the property and explore nature in a very positive and low to no impact way. I also would like to point out the Mendham's Pond Recreation Area. In the 5 years that I have been driving past it, I have seen it open twice in that entire time. It is not readily accessible, and it is very limited in access for people. And as you stated, everything requires a financial means to get in there, which if we truly care about the less affluent in our community, providing free and open space where people can have a small parking area like our other areas to park their car and go access nature and get out and experience what real life is like. That is an important component of that for the people of the town.
Okay. Select person Air, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, for Andy, it might have misquoted, but I can't know the exact name. But Sasquatch or Tamposi property, it's a national heritage, something heritage. I don't know if it's national heritage. Connor don't know the correct term, but that's who holds the major easement on that.
So any other questions, comments, concerns regarding the request to apply for the grant?
George Bailey and Jim Sakosha both had their hands up.
Okay, go ahead, George.
George muted.
George, you're muted. You need to, what is it, *6, Connor?
I have it. Thank you.
Okay, go
Am
ahead,
I all
George.
set? Thank you. I would like to draw everybody's attention to part of the work notices that we have on the letter from the Barrington Conservation Commission, easement dated June 19th. I'd like to get one. I'd like to go to that document, and it also, the document goes on to say that if we take over that, we still are going to have to spend town money to monitor the easement and to ensure that the care of the easement is taken care of, and so that will be used for the tax money that the townspeople have paid to the conservation fund. So I think there is notice here that if we do accept this, we will be responsible for some financial cost, not financial money to buy the property, but financial money to maintain it if we so desire to do this. Thank you.
Go ahead, Select Person Sakosha.
All I wanted to bring up, she brought up the trash over at Stonehouse. You know, if we look back in the last couple months, it's been crazy with the pandemic and whatnot. And I think that there was an influx of people. Okay, I need to get out of the house. That was the gateway to get out. And I think it's been overwhelmed this year. And do I think when we go back to regular lives, is that going to happen every day? I don't believe so.
I think it's a valid point. So, any other questions, comments, or concerns in reference to the conservation grant application request?
No, I would be willing to make a motion on it with the condition that the property is accessible to the general public.
Is there any other questions, comments, or concerns? So I think that speaks to whether the granting agency, and Karen Gould, you may know better than we do on this, would the granting agency allow public access to this property?
I believe the application is requested from Barrington. I'm not sure that if Barrington provides the application that it's necessary that Barrington would have to manage and supervise the easement. It may be able to be monitored through another source, which would, so the only financial burden would be the application process.
So who is the other source that would be monitoring the land?
That I don't know yet. I just
Okay.
know I need either a municipality, a water source, or a land trust. And I
think-
also reiterate that my neighbors who have been managing the access road own the road, and they have unanimously been opposed to the access by the public.
Connor, do you want to speak to private roads in the town of Barrington and whether access can be limited?
So this situation is actually quite clear because the courts made it clear that the access through Holly Lake Shores Drive is a private road owned by the roads and owned by the residents, and they can choose to restrict access. The conservation property in question does touch Young Road. There's no developed access over that area, but the property does abut roads other than Holly Lake Shores Drive.
Very good, thank you.
Yep,
At this time,
Not Young Road. I'm sorry.
France.
France Road. Thank you, Dean.
okay.
That was going to be my comment.
I'm under the impression that we need to know what the other source for overseeing this property would potentially be if we went for this grant. Does anyone else agree that we need that answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, of course.
If I would agree with that, if the intent is that it's not going to fall back onto the town. If the town is going to be the holder of the long-term conservation easement for it, as we are for many other properties, then I would request that the parking through France Road or one of the other main roads that it abuts or auxiliary roads has access to the property for people to get out and explore nature in a very positive way.
Karen, is the intent of the Aquatic Resource Mitigation Fund to not allow access on conserved properties like this?
The state of New Hampshire Drinking Water Source Trust Fund, together with Aquatic Resources Mediation, do not require public access. They are focused on the water and the shoreline, and they're focused on the wetlands
And
the wildlife.
My question was, would they limit it?
Well, I don't I just know that my contact with the New Hampshire Drinking Water Grant Bureau has stated to me that there's no, you can be granted your funding without public access. There's no public access required
And
for
would
ARM
public,
and the state DES money.
and the important part for us is, would public access and the ability to access and explore the land be limited if you explored this particular grant?
I cannot offer public access as one fraction of ownership of the road. I am not in a position to do that because I do not own the road. I am not a majority owner of the road. The residents on Holiday Lakeshore Drive, which is the access, we don't have parking there. There's no parking, and I cannot authorize, even though I am an owner of the wetlands and an owner of the land. I do not own the road, and that has been defined in the March 10th, 2018 decision at the Superior Court in Dover.
And if access was available on France Road to the property for people to explore it, would we know whether this grant would limit that access?
There's no public access from France Road to. There's no public access from France Road. I mean, there's the Jeffries easement, which allows public access, but there's no public access from France Road, even for parking. I mean, it's just very limited.
Okay. So, any other questions, comments, or concerns on this issue?
I have one, Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead, Select Person Bailey.
My question is, and I don't know, you can handle it. My question is, do you have deeded access rights under the deed that you currently hold for that property?
Which property? Are you talking 26131, the 131 acres?
Yes, the property that we're discussing tonight.
And your question is it a deeded right?
Do you have the deeded right of way to get for access to your property?
Of course, yes.
There you go. That answers the question right there. Then we have access to the road. If it's deeded to you, the other people can't shut it off.
No, but the Superior Court decision in March 10th basically supports ownership of the road because the people who live in the small community, which have managed the road. So as a result of adverse possession, the judge ruled that the residents, after 55 years of managing the road, that they own the road, and they are in 100% support of the priority of water over hiking, the priority of wetlands over hiking, and the priority of wildlife and the beaver bog for in the migratory birds that are in the wetlands, which is 10 acres, a large area for breeding. And as a result of the fact that they're breeding, when they cross the dirt road, they're crossing a road with very little traffic. And as a result, they can cross the road, whether they're small salamanders, anything up to moose, and they can burrow into the land without getting squashed when they cross the road. So the private road really fosters the safety of those animals and everything from aquatic to mammals.
Okay.
And also the area is proliferating during this time, especially with migratory birds.
Yes.
And it's been very, 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 very big with huge amount of birds in this neighborhood during this period of COVID.
Thank you,
So
Karen.
there's no question that the fact that there has been limited activity in this area. We've just seen a tremendous proliferation of everything from birds that I've never seen before.
Okay.
It's huge.
Based on the amount
Select-
of information on our agenda, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns in reference to the grant?
Final comment that I have is looking at the GIS tax card. There is a pretty large track where that abuts France Road. So my general sense is it would be pretty easy to make sure that access that would be able to be provided so that people could walk onto the property without having to develop any trails or do anything that actually disturbs the land as a whole.
It would disturb the land because that
Okay.
land has been found to have
Madam
the
Chair,
herbal.
order.
But all right, sorry.
Go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
No, it was point of order. Was
Yes,
recognized by the chair.
So, would anyone like to make a motion at this time to allow for the conservation grant application?
As I stated, I'll gladly make a motion for the grant application with the condition that it does allow for residents to be able to walk onto the property.
And would anyone else like to second that motion? I have a second from Select Person Air. Could I have a roll call vote beginning with Select Person Air?
We have was that a verbal second?
I saw a physical second from Select Person Air.
Air second, verbally.
Thank you.
Roll call
Air.
vote beginning with Select Person Air, please.
Air, A.
Bailey, no.
Bailey, no. Vice Chair Knapp?
Aye.
Select Person Sakosha?
Sakosha, no.
Okay.
We need a little
I
bit
want
more.
to, I want to be very, very clear that I'm going to vote in favor of this motion only with the caveat that there is public access to the 160-acre parcel from France Road. If that is not possible based on this grant, then we can bring this up and re-explore it at another meeting, but that is the motion that is passing before this board. Thank you all. I have a zoning, I'm sorry. Am I to move on to zoning board of adjustment appointment, or do we have Phyllis on here?
Is there a Phyllis Lapointe participating via phone? You might have to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Karen Gould.
Is now exiting.
Phyllis Lapointe, are you there joining us? It's not imperative that she be here. I had sent her the information. I think she wanted to try to join, but we can address it now. It'll be rather quick.
Yep. So it's my understanding that the Women's Club would like to place a sign for their 100th anniversary, and they'd like our support for it, correct?
Correct.
I should tell you that it's a wonderful organization, that the people participating in this club work very, very hard. And I will share with you that over the course of the past decade, both of my children have been recipients of a scholarship to attend college through the Barrington Women's Club. So it's been a wonderful access point for them to be able to obtain additional funding for books and tuition for college. Any questions, comments, or concerns in reference to the sign? Go ahead, Select Person Air.
Are they any affiliation with the Barrington Chamber of Commerce?
They may be members of it, but no, they are the Barrington Women's Club. You see them each time we hold an election. They typically have a bake sale or a raffle.
Where would they put the sign?
I think they're putting it in the middle of the Caliph's intersection. Am I correct, Connor?
Somewhere at the intersections where they'd like to put it. If there's support from the select board, I will meet out there with representatives from DOT and District 6 and the Women's Club to determine a suitable location. Happy to have input from the board if the board so chooses.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Is there any other discussion before we go to roll call vote?
Nope.
Okay, select person Air.
Air I.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha.
And Hardikoff, aye. Thank you, Connor, for meeting them.
Yes.
I have an appointment, but I also have, oh yeah, so we have the zoning board of adjustment, appointment of full member, select person George Bailey.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Oh,
Good.
I have a comment.
go ahead, select person Air.
Do we need to go non-public on this member?
I don't feel that we do. Does anyone else feel we need to go into non-public?
I don't.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to accept or to put forward the appointment of select person George Bailey to the zoning board of adjustment?
I'll make the
Sakosha,
motion.
Okay, so I have a motion by select person Sakosha and a second by select person Air. Could I have a roll call vote beginning with select person Air?
Air I.
Bailey, abstain.
Nap aye.
Sakosha.
And Hardikoff, aye. Thank you again, George, for continuing to provide service to the town.
I would like to thank everybody on the board for your support. Thank you very much.
Okay. I know that we have, it's going to go under old business, working dog. So right now we have public comment, 15 minutes. This is where I get my timer out. 3 minutes per person. If you are a resident of the town of Barrington or own a business and have interest in the town and would like to speak for up to 3 minutes, please alert our town administrator. You can do that by either raising your hand, which if you mouse over your screen, you'll see a little hand and you can click on that to raise your hand, or you can send a quick chat and it will be obtained by the town administrator who will let us know that you'd like to speak.
I see a comment from Matt Town who would like to speak.
Okay, Matt Town, you have 3 minutes.
If you're on your computer, you can press the microphone icon to unmute yourself. I can't hear anything. Can anybody else?
I cannot. Matt, if you're there, it looks like you're unmuted.
If you have headphones in, maybe unplug them. That sometimes messes up the computer microphone.
Or you can call in to 603-664-0240. Conference ID 748-817-934 #.
I'm gonna give this a, if we got Matt on here, I'm gonna give it a full minute for him to figure out how to call in. Matt, again, 664-0240. Enter conference code 748-814-934 #.
Is there anybody else who would like to make a public comment? If you're on your phone, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. Or as the chairperson said, drop a comment. I see a hand up from Donald Coker.
Go ahead, Ms.
I will defer until Representative Town gets connected. So I would just like to get in line, but certainly we'll defer to him first.
I just heard someone beep in. Matt, is that you?
No, it's a Rob.
Okay, so
I'm going to type in the ID.
I'm doing it now.
Oh, you beat me.
Matt, we've held for 1.5 minutes holding the meeting for you. Are you going to speak?
I think he's going to try to call in is certainly what it seems like. And that'll take a moment.
Did he text you that message, Connor?
That came through the chat. He asked for the ID again and then indicated that yes, he plans to speak.
Okay. I'm going to hold the meeting for another minute for him.
Chair.
Go ahead, select person air while we wait for our,
On to the Working Dog Foundation.
we could move to that, but I'd like to get through public comment, please, first.
I have no objection.
Matt Town.
Okay, Matt, we hear you. I'm going to
He is now
reset,
joining.
begin your, Matt, we've waited for a few minutes for you. You have 3 minutes to speak. Please start.
Okay, I appreciate the courtesy of giving me working on these tech issues. I really want to respond to Connor's assessment of the legal opinion that was posted as part of the agenda on your website. Specifically, I want to talk about the notion that we, in our petition, we never mentioned control of guns. We talked about firing ranges and control of lead pollution and safety. So this is not about a Second Amendment issue. This is not about control of guns. And we repeatedly said that during our presentation as well as our petition. So that whole legal opinion talking about that was frankly irrelevant to what we're trying to do. Second thing is that we know for a fact that we have some level of lead pollution here. Whether or not that meets a tier one, a phase one review is open to some discussion, but it was done by a certified industrial hygienist that's a master's level credential, and they do those on a pretty routine basis. So I think it's very credible that we have an issue on that piece of property. Finally, I would also like to point out that the whole drinking water thing in terms of schools, we never mentioned anything about children having lead in the drinking water in schools. Again, that is deflection. That's not what we're about. We're identifying a piece of property that we know has problems and extrapolating from that to the rest of the town. That's what's so critical for everybody to understand, is that when hundreds of rounds are being shot off in a particular area, that lead doesn't go away. So the legal opinion, quite frankly, totally missed the mark relative to our petition. And I'm not sure how that's even the subject of some conversation. We need to get back to the notion that we have an issue, and it's not a gun rights issue, and we never said it was a gun rights issue. It is about noise, pollution, and safety. And you have in your own documentation people who are expressing concern that they can't walk the SELT trails or the conservation trails. So it's important for us to stay focused on what the issue is here. I know that I'm a potential thorn in your side, but it's really critical we stay focused on what the issue is and not what I saw in that legal opinion, which totally missed the mark. So that's what I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You did that with 9 seconds to spare, and I appreciate it, Matt Town. Who else would like to speak during public comment? We have 12 minutes left, 3 minutes per person.
I believe Donald Coker was next in line.
Go ahead, Donald, and you may have to press unmute, or Connor may have to allow your voice to be heard. So go ahead and give it a shot.
Well, tell me, can you hear me all right?
Matt Town.
Loud, clear.
I'm sorry, there was something.
Is
Can
now
you
exiting.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. Start the clock, Madam Chairperson. Excuse me. I guess my response is very, very simple. Your attorney, who you rely on, and we all rely on for advice, stated very clearly, municipalities only have the authority that is expressly given to them. And on this issue, the legislature is very clear that it is only the state that can regulate the sale, use, possession, etc. of firearms. The state also retains the power regarding hunting. In the end, the only real option is for the police to offer some training and usage, as I heard was suggested in this situation. And for the record, Major Waldron would be happy to work with anyone to further that very specific goal. And I would say in conclusion, I have no idea where a representative town came up with drinking water lead in schools. And I just, no one ever said a word about that. And I would close by saying the last sentence on your legal memo, based on legal review and a review of RSA 15926, the subject matter of the original petition is inconsistent with this jurisdiction of the select board. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I am a pretty reasonably bright guy, and I think I can understand the English language. And what that is, in my humble opinion, is a blanket rejection of Representative Town's petition. So therefore, anything else that comes out of this is frankly not legal. So I respectfully disagree with Representative Town's assessment of your town attorney's legal opinion. And I would like to thank you formally, everybody, for listening to us, and would invite you to come to Major Waldron at your convenience. We'd be delighted to have you as a guest. Thank you.
I didn't, Tracy, you're still muted, Chairperson Hardikoff. I did not see any other hands or comments come through, so I believe those are the two public comments for this evening.
Very good.
For this
Thank
session.
you both. Yep, thank you both for participating. Select Person Air, 3 minutes, public comment.
I'd like to make public comment, and this is not a joke or anything. I am an observationist and stuff, and I research everything I do, so I have solid grounds to fall back on, and I ran on the people's voice. I take their concerns and their things and listen to them, then I'll look into it, then I'll act on it, and I will not do personal vendettas or anything like that. So that everything I do, and I do personally get persecuted for all this, and people hate me for it, but you know what? I don't care. I'll speak my mind and do what I feel is right. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? We have, it looks like.
George Bailey would.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Going along with this discussion, I would like to let everybody know that's within earshot that House Bill 1115 was expedient to the House, and the House turned around and put that there. That bill, if you would look it up, has a lot of the items that Mr. Town was brought up in their petition. So I just want to let you know that even though the select board can't do it, the House of Representatives decided that they didn't want to do anything with it also. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. Any other public comments? No, I would certainly, based on the discussion during public comment, encourage everyone to read page 3 and 4 of the town administrator's report on actions there as well. We're going to move to review of the meeting minutes from June 22nd of 2020. Any corrections to those meeting minutes?
Negative.
If there are no corrections, would anyone like to make a motion to accept those meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the July 13th, July 13th, the June 22nd meeting of the select board.
June 22nd.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Knapp and Select Person Sakosha. Roll call vote, please, beginning with Select Person Air.
Air high, and it's Andy's birthday.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha, aye.
Hardikoff, aye. Vice Chair Knapp, you really should remember your birthday next time.
Thank goodness.
Up next is our staff reports from Administrator MacGyver.
Okay, two quick things. First, I'll cover the July work anniversaries, which in my report is mislabeled as June work anniversaries. Please forgive me. I'll make sure that the record is reflected accurately. So starting with our very own fire chief. So he's certainly been on the payroll for longer than this, quite a bit longer than this, but our appointed fire chief was appointed 21 years ago on July 1st and has served in that role ever since. And as you're all well aware, at that time it was a volunteer chief, part-time chief position, and I think it was, well, I don't have it written down, so I don't remember, but it was like 10 years ago or so that it became a full-time position. The chief's on. He can fact check me, but it's a long time to have the same chief serving. We're lucky to have him. He's a great chief and a great mentor of mine in this role. So glad to have him for 21 years as chief.
Connor, I think that was just after the time we stopped using parchment paper.
He must have talked them in. He must have talked the prior select board into it.
Okay, well, that's a remarkable anniversary. Do you want to read the other ones, Town Administrator MacGyver?
I do. Wasn't supposed to be.
Congratulations, Rick.
Jessica Tennis, our recreation director, not assistant recreation director. Boy, a couple mistakes right here. For 15 years, been with the town of Barrington. Seth Wentworth, fire department for 10 years. Marcia Gassis, our town planner for 8 years. Paul Hagenmiller in the fire department for 6 years, and Peyton Goodell, deputy tax collector finance officer for 3 years. So certainly appreciate all of their tenure to the town of Barrington. Only other item I have that isn't on the agenda, I sent out an email today, and this is more just a point of notification for the board and the community. So we had talked previously about the police department pursuing a sealed bid process to buy a second used cruiser through the city of Dover. While we were still waiting for that sealed bid process to become available, the town was notified that a light bar manufacturer, Wayland, was getting rid of one of their demonstration models with similar miles, 55,000 miles. It's a 2016 Charger, same body style that we have now, for $17,000. Has most of the equipment that we'd need to outfit it with anyways. It would just be a $500 expense to transfer the radio and the radar. And so for less money, we're ending up with a cruiser that has similar miles, but they're highway miles. They're not cruiser miles. This wasn't an in-service cruiser. And so just by point of notification, want to let the board know that we're moving in that direction this week. Certainly, if you had questions or concerns, you could raise them. But because we talked about that cruiser previously, I wanted to make sure that was clear in the public forum. And the funding source is completely the same as the board previously approved. But I know the police chief is on if you'd like to ask any questions.
I'm excited we're saving money.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
Best thing can happen.
Yep. So do we have consensus from the board on this, that you're all comfortable, that you've been notified? Go ahead, select person Air.
Well, I've seen my facts before, but in 2 years, there's gonna be up again. But my understanding, I'll vote present. I'm not taking a stand on it.
Well, we're not going to vote because we've already voted on this, but it's great that we're moving forward with a product that has a little less usage and has a little less of a price tag. That's exciting. Anything else, TA MacGyver?
No, I'll turn it over to Municipal Office Administrator Cottle.
Okay.
All right, for your signature, I have AP Register 2020-56, and fresh off the presses, one oath of office appointing a full member of the zoning board, and the minutes for the June 22nd, 2020 meeting. That's it.
Very good. I assume select person Bailey will take some time to head down and take his oath of office.
I clearly will, Madam Chair. I plan on doing it tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay,
Thank
we are moving on to old business. There was a large volume of material for the board to review in its entirety, and I have to thank the town administrator once again for getting everything to us so that we could review everything prior to the meeting. Based on everything we've reviewed, we're bringing up the home gun ranges petition and the counter petition. I wanted to very quickly cover those page 3 and 4. So the select board was given 2 presentations. We reached out to various municipal leaders throughout the state to gauge any of their activities surrounding home gun ranges. And the response that we did receive was that voters did at different times pass different petitions or warrant articles about this, but that RSA 15926 preempted all of those, and that they were therefore unenforceable ordinances in each of the New Hampshire towns. The town also worked with the Hazardous Waste Remediation Bureau for the state of New Hampshire to discuss the topic of home ranges. And I appreciate that our town administrator has ensured that the maintenance of home gun ranges and how lead on various personal property can be handled while still enjoying the ability to target practice. So there is information available to any homeowner for Barrington right on the Barrington site. Further actions were that the state well water testing results, specifically monitoring lead levels. As we know, Barrington does not have a public water source. We have various water supply areas throughout the town of Barrington, but we are all on well water. Am I correct in stating that, T.A. MacGyver?
There's a small water district over by on Hall Road as a result of a Superfund site.
Yep.
But it's not municipally managed.
Right. So we don't have municipal water supply. The review that was done was actually very current. It was summer and fall of 2019, and it was volunteer water participations from various school and child care center sites throughout the town of Barrington, all receiving water that comes from the groundwater in which we all generally participate in drinking. And we were happy with the results and happy to see that people voluntarily continue to participate in that process. The Conservation Commission that had provided some information on private property, we followed up with that homeowner, and at this time, that landowner, and at this time, the TA is waiting any interest that that private landowner may have in a phase 1 environmental assessment. We also are looking at the behavior of volunteers, and we'll be doing some appropriate training and discussion on how volunteers may act on behalf of their appointments in their volunteer capacity in the town of Barrington. The Barrington Police offered to talk about curriculum for gun safety, but I'm also happy to see that Major Waldron's is also offering gun safety courses, and they're further willing and very happy to participate in training people. So both petitions have been supported and brought before the select board. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns in reference to either petition 1 or counter petition 2? Go ahead, Select Person Air.
When you refer to them water studies and stuff, there's a couple years ago, Dartmouth did it. I think it was that information came from that study. Other people volunteered their water.
Yep.
John Stephen won a iPad and he gave it to one of the department heads.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns in reference to petition 1 or counter petition 2?
Very well done. Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone like to make action in reference to petition 1 or counter petition 2?
What action are you looking for, Madam Chair?
If there's no action, then we simply have made the decision as a collective board to not take action.
Thank you.
So I'll ask for the last time, any action on petition 1 or counter petition 2? Okay, moving on. Thank you all. Province Road improvements. I think this was a topic of discussion, and Mark Moreau, are you on where you could speak to what we found when you did some test pits?
Yes, I'm here. We dug a test pit out on Province Road, and what we found was a pretty substantial depth of silty clay material that was devoid of a fair amount of substantial sized stones to support any great amount of weight at all, and basically react well with water. Very, very little stone at all was discovered as a result of this pit. So I want to start out by saying that I agree with Select Person Air about it would be nice to do something about that road. He's 100% correct. It is being used as a cut through. The traffic is increasing more and more on it every day. Too bad the majority of it is out of town traffic, but it's traffic nonetheless, and we have to deal with it. The one problem I have is I am unfamiliar with the process that he wants to use, especially in this application where the subbase is literally sitting in a pond. I think you probably got some, because of the nature of the material that's there now, you probably have some capillary attraction going on there, which basically means the material you've got there is going to not only saturate the water at the level of the water, it's going to wick the water up above the level of the standing water, just by the nature of the material. And the more vehicles that go over it, the more the material is going to pump, and it's going to force more and more water to the top. I can't 100% get behind it. I would love to see it work. Don't get me wrong, but I can't 100% get behind it without outside technical expertise weighing in on it through, proper core samples and proper analysis and technical recommendations from people that really know what they're doing. Right now, this is going to be a $61,000 maybe, and for that kind of money, I can't get behind it. I'd love to, but I can't. And looking a little further down the road past the immediate problem, if we were to do the stone injection, you'd also have to get a large grader in there and a compactor for a couple of days, cutting the grade down from each end of that section where all the driveways are, and the driveways are already low because there's been so much material put in that road. So that grade would have to be cut and brought towards the middle where there's a sag in there that plenty of room to put all the spare material. That way you'd have room at the driveways to accommodate your 6 inches of gravel. There's 1,500 tons of gravel going on that 2,570-foot section of road. It's a lot of material. So the next thing you want to think about is, let's just, you're going to be going through at least one winter with this material, whether it works in the springtime or whether it doesn't. The amount of frost that gets set in the ground in recent years is practically non-existent. Last year, there was very little frost in the ground, which means the dirt roads, the dirt was just getting plowed right off into the ditches every time you plow them because there's just no frost. This road will be no exception. So you'll be plowing your $61,000 plus investment into the ditch for lack of frost. So let's go a little further. If by the time we get to spring and we find out that it does work, then the only way you can really protect your investment and by not letting it get plowed off even more in consecutive years, and nobody wants to hear this, but you're going to have to pave it. It's the only way you're going to seal it up. And it's the old adage, build it and they will come. The more friendly you make that road for motorists, the more motorists are going to use it. And you're going to end up with a bad intersection where that road meets Ham Road. And you're going to end up with another intersection. It's going to be a death trap where Ham Road meets Route 125. It's going to be just like another Scruton's Pond Road or another Beauty Hill Road, where now we're doing traffic studies to figure out how to keep people from getting killed and injured. So it's a multifaceted problem, way beyond the muddy road. It's a multifaceted issue. And this is the way I feel about it. But as far as the immediate problem, I would really like to see some engineering expertise here before we go pulling the trigger on this.
Tracy, you're still muted.
Hang on. It's my understanding you're looking for a $3,500 approval for geotechnical test borings.
And another $2,000, I believe, for the analysis of those borings. Am I right, Connor?
So 55.
Yes.
In that area, I believe, yes.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns from the select board?
Oh, I misunderstood it. I thought it was 3,500. Then if you cut back every longer distance, it's 2,000.
So it looks like it's 5,500 in order to do the borings and get a full report. I will share with you, I recently went through this on another project and the cost was 6,200, so it's certainly less expensive by about 10%. Any questions, comments, concerns from the rest of the select board?
No, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you to Mark for bringing such a detailed report. It shows that he's working with us, and I'm sure the voters were going to approve it. Approve what he's doing by saving the money.
So would anyone like to make a motion to expend the 5,500?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, and roll call vote beginning with select person Air.
There, I.
Haley, aye.
Nap, aye.
Sakosha,
Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all.
Is now joining.
Thank you.
Can I, is it too late to add, do I wait to new business?
You want to add something to new business?
Or related to this subject?
Okay. I'm just going to write new business, select person Air. So right now in front of us, we have the discussion about the MOU changes, and that's taking place at the 27th meeting.
Yeah, so I'd asked select board members to send me any adjustments they'd like to see to the MOU, so we could finalize a draft to share with the Recreation Commission ahead of time, so there can be a joint conversation regarding the proposed changes at the joint meeting on the 27th. So right now, I aggregated the feedback that I received for board members. Thank you for sending those along. I hope I captured your intent. So this is your opportunity to look at it as a board, see the feedback from other board members, make any adjustments you'd like to see before finalizing a draft and sending it over to the Rec Commission to give them a couple of weeks ahead of the meeting on the 27th.
Very good. Thank you. I think I've filed my.
I was just going to say, in your packet, you have the original MOU. You can see that I changed the formatting to make it consistent with our other policies and procedures, adding the header, the letterhead. I have a track changes version, which shows the red line changes, and then the final clean version with the draft watermark.
Very good. Thank you. So do you want us to get back to you in the next week if there's any other questions, comments, or concerns, or would you like us to provide them to you right now?
I was hoping that we could finalize the draft tonight so I could get it to the Rec Commission and give them the full 2 weeks to consider the changes. This isn't finalized, right? So we'll still meet with the Rec Commission on the 27th. If they have any questions or concerns or other changes they'd like to see, the select board could certainly consider those at that time also. So yes, I'd be looking for the select board to support sending something to the Rec Commission.
Yeah, the requests that I had for changes are in there, so I feel comfortable. Anyone else? Questions, comments, concerns?
The only thing I'd like to say is I looked over, but I didn't mark anything up because I thought we were having a general conversation tonight. I clearly misunderstood the fact that we were going to nail it down, but everything I read that's there looks good.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, so moving on, this will be the draft that we present to the rec. I heard someone.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
this is Jim Noble, the Rec Commission.
Oh, hi, Jim.
How are you?
Good.
So as fiduciaries, before the select board can vote, we have to make a procedural objection to the proposed changes. This issue, specifically as it relates to clauses 8 and 9, but not limited to those, was decided in 2006. And the legislative body made the decision that the Recreation Commission is going to handle all personnel and financial matters. Now, we are not saying that the select board is not the governing body. We are just simply saying that on this issue, the superseding body is the legislative body. And those have to be presented through a warrant article if you want to make those changes. We're free to have discussions. We're free to engage. But as fiduciaries, we can't agree to diminish any right or duties that we have granted to us by the legislative body. And before you can consider anything substantive, like the changes, the proposed changes, the select board has to vote on the procedural objection that we're making.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
I think what we originally put forward was to present this to the Rec Commission, then have a full discussion with them. We are not in this. What we're doing tonight is not making a change. We're just submitting it to them, and then we're going to have a discussion with the Rec Board. And we're not making a change to change the MOU. That's the way I understand it. And if I'm incorrect, please correct me.
That is correct.
And we understand that. We are just saying, as fiduciaries, with this, the way this commission is right now, we cannot agree to diminish any authority granted to us by the legislative body. However, we can certainly discuss shared responsibilities, but we can't do anything that would deplete that. That's what we're saying. Respectfully, I might add.
Select Person Hardikoff.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, my suggestion to that would be to have the Rec Commission mark it up, provide commentary back. That way we can all be on the same page for discussion at the next meeting, which is what was planned. And that's a great way for Jim and everyone else on the commission to be able to very clearly, in a very detailed manner, lay out any concerns or point of reference for us. That way we can make sure we've appropriately reviewed everything, and we can have a very productive conversation around it.
Okay. So what we're suggesting is that prior to the meeting for the MOU, and I likely will not be heading that meeting, Vice Chair Knapp, you will be, any objections, including this procedural objection, be written up and sent to Connor? Correct? TA McCarthy?
Yeah, we don't have any objection to that. If you're addressing us, I'm not sure you.
Yeah, I'm just, Connor, does that work for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And, you know, from my perspective, what my attempt was to get pen to paper on what I heard from select board members, changes they'd like to see. And so recognizing that, you know, certainly neither the select board nor the Rec Commission can undo action from the legislative body. But I think if, as talking points for the process moving forward, if the select board intends to say, hey, these are the types of things we'd like to see different, and the end result of that has to be going back to the voters to say, hey, you know, this is a proposal from what the select board and Rec Commission discussed, knowing that the process may not end with the Rec Commission and the select board, but as a talking point for the select board to be able to communicate what they'd like to see.
Okay, so we'll wait a write-up from the Rec Commission, and somebody's getting feedback. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but.
I just muted Andy.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jim, for expressing
Sorry.
the commission's perspective.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Okay, and we are moving on to, are we discussing the Recreation Gym Fire Code Correction Act plan
Yes.
right now?
Yes.
Okay. Jesse, are you on here? Is Jim present? Who's presenting?
I'm happy to.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna mute myself. Go right ahead, Jesse.
So we have just been meeting with the fire engineer as well as Rick Walker and the fire marshals to try to come up with a timeline in regards to the fire separation. That being said, we have a kind of a corrective action plan in regards to addressing the firewall. So I have passed that information on to Rick as the fire chief, and he has submitted it with the fire marshals. So at this time, we are just looking for your guys's approval just to make sure that you guys are aware of the timeline in regards to addressing the firewall. So with that, with the proposed corrective action plan that we have, they have basically given us a leeway in regards to addressing that firewall. So that way we would be able to have it addressed prior to August of next year, which would allow us to continue to run summer camp for not this year, but next year with our numbers as we always have in the past, with the understanding that we would not exceed that 117 maximum for any other programs except for that summer camp program, and that the doors needed to remain clear and open for the participants to go in and out of the building. So we just wanted to let you know that we have filed that for that corrective action plan, as well as worked with the fire marshals and Rick Walker, and we have their support on that aspect. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of this, just to give us a little bit of time to get that project actually finished from beginning to end.
And Chairperson Hardikoff, if I could add two quick things, and you're still muted. So just while you unmute yourself. So one, this is something that the rec department and Jesse specifically has worked very collaboratively with all of the involved parties on. And I think this is an excellent resolution. The second thing is, so the select board being the ultimate caretakers for all town property, this would be a corrective action plan that the select board is agreeing to, not dissimilar to if there was a code violation identified at a commercial property. And the fire chief has in his ability to place a property owner on a corrective action plan so that there's a path to compliance. And this was recommended by the fire marshal. So the select board's role here is really to say, yes, we agree to this corrective action plan to your fire chief and ultimately the fire marshal's office to have this code issue resolved by the end of August 2021.
Very good. Questions, comments, concerns?
Select Person Hardikoff, I have a question.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
My question is it's actually a two-part question. The first part of the question is that if the space where the food pantry is was part of the Recreation Commission, would it still need to have 2 layers of drywall?
Andy, that depends on what that use is.
If it was part of the Recreation Commission, would it need 2 layers of drywall?
Again, it's not who has the property, it's what the use is intended for. So without knowing what that space was going to be used for, you can't really answer that question.
If it was, for example, say it was office space.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Certainly we could research that.
The reason I ask is that I know often we have brought a fork truck up or other means of equipment to be able to unload the food pantry. Would it actually make sense to move the food pantry over near the highway department where the equipment is that it's utilized for, and provide a very appropriate space in that area to do it.
The food is hand unloaded at the food pantry. The fork truck was used when we were meeting down at the movie theater to unload bulk food for distribution, but the only time that a pallet jack or anything is used at the food pantry is Christmas and Thanksgiving, when truckloads are delivered for specifically them two programs. At all other times, it's all hand loaded into the building.
And just from my perspective too, when we are working with Carino in regards to the addition that we're proposing out front of the building, they are requiring us to do a 2-hour burn wall between the current gym and the office space as well. So just based off of the use that we would be utilizing for the proposed addition would be virtually the same for what we would be using for the food pantry. So just based off of the fact that it's required for a 2-hour burn wall for that project, I would assume that it would be something very similar in regards to the food pantry as well, just due to the anticipated use. But again, Rick would probably have to, we'd have to do a little bit of legwork, but just from what I've seen throughout the project, that's what I've noticed.
I would agree. That's probably accurate. I just wasn't sure and figured it was worth asking the question. Probably the only way around that would be if it was just a storage space.
My one other question was ECLC. Is that you guys are the emergency evacuation location the town gym is for anytime they have an emergency and have to evacuate their building? Do they have more than 117 students?
So from my understanding, they do have over 117 students. However, I have brought it to the attention of Jim, told the maintenance person as well as the superintendent of the school. So they were looking into some alternatives as well as some backup plans, but I have not heard back from them, but they are aware of the situation and they are assessing things from their end.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I think the next up is the police body worn cameras, but would anyone mind if we covered the working dog grant first?
I think I'd like to vote from the board on this, Chief. And so this would be the board agreeing to this corrective action plan as proposed.
Is it being paid for by the town funds?
I think that's a discussion for the meeting on the 27th.
So how can we vote on something that involves corrective action and potential payment without the full scope?
I don't think that's my question to answer, but I think what if the board would like to postpone this decision until after the discussion on the 27th, I don't think that would materially change history given the fact that there's no programs in the gym right now. So it's certainly something that could be tabled.
Select board, how do you feel about that?
I will not vote. Do I know where the money's coming from?
I'm sorry, select person error, you were mumbled. Someone's giving feedback.
I cannot give you a vote. Do I know where the money's coming from?
I agree with your perspective.
Sounds like
I think
Joel.
Chief Walker has something to say, and then I'm going to mute him again because him and Andy, for some reason, they're the two echo guys.
Go ahead, Chief.
So really what you're voting for is to allow this corrective action plan to take place. If you don't authorize the corrective action plan as owners of the building, then it can't happen anyway. It has nothing to do with how it's paid for. It's whether the 5 of you as agents of the town that are responsible for town buildings, whether you 5 agree that it's okay for the corrective action plan. And if you don't agree to that, then they would not be able to use the space beyond 117 people until the correction plan was, until the corrections were made.
It's my understanding that the gym isn't open at this time, so voting on the 27th of July won't impact any programs, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Is everyone comfortable tabling this till July 27th?
Yes.
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 Okay, can we move that, T.A. MacGyver, to the 27th?
No problem.
Thank you. And at the time, let's get the full scope of the funding and the acceptance of it if we could.
Absolutely.
Okay, Working Dog Foundation grant.
I believe Chief Joy is on the line. You have a copy of the grant application paperwork, which outlines the program. Chief Joy is here to answer any questions. Looking for the board support to pursue this grant opportunity. It's a 50% funding match.
I have one question. Chief Joy, do we know who will be handling the, I hate to say, the working dog?
It will be highly likely that it's going to be Officer Morse. He has to complete the selection process, which still involves an oral board and at least one other phase, but it's likely to be Officer Morse.
Okay, very good. Any other questions, comments, concerns in go ahead, Select Person Air.
I can't support any future spending with these grants, money being thrown around. If my paperwork says total, first year total original price, second year 75%, third year 50%, fourth year 35%. So it's an ongoing expense and increases in the future. And where will we be in 4 years?
Any other questions?
I don't think he's reading that right. I believe he's looking at the prorated value of the dog. So if we were to cancel the program, that's what we would owe for the dog back to the foundation.
Right, the matching funds are 10%.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
General comment that I have was one of the, excuse me, one of the pieces that we had talked about, excuse me, was that was with Gypsy retirement we recognize the value in having such a highly trained and skilled leader in the canine industry with Chief Joy. But was it something that we wanted to start over again on developing, and was it actually worth it for a small community when the surrounding communities around us have a dog, specifically Dover?
And they live in Barrington.
Could I, and are there any other questions, comments, or concerns? So I have to tell you that part of the meeting of the training groups takes place on Pease, and I have watched many training sessions outside of the fire station at Pease, and it's a pretty amazing thing to watch. I personally view these dogs as an additional resource for our community, especially given the rural factor of trying to make your way on foot through the woods to apprehend someone. So I have a strong propensity to support this grant application. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I have one, Madam Chair. This is George.
Go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
Thank you very much. I have two items. I think that I do agree that having a dog does put the financial responsibility on us and the voters. But I also feel that even though other communities around us have that same unit, if we need it, by the time it gets here, is it going to be on time? My estimation is no. I think that having it here is something we need. And the way that the general public is acting, and not saying that the residents of Barrington are going to act that way, but the way they're acting around the country, I think it would be mindful for us to have that kind of protection here. And secondly, my other statement is, it's more of a question for the chief. Do we still have a vehicle for transporting the dog if necessary, or what would have to happen?
Am I okay to speak now? I'm not going to walk on anybody.
No, go right ahead.
Okay. So yeah, Unit 1 is currently still outfitted as a canine vehicle. I actually moved out of Unit 1 and had it completely detailed approximately 3-ish weeks ago, just so that it was fully cleaned out and the old dog hair, odor, etc. was removed as much as possible. So Unit 1 is still standardized as a canine unit, good for probably another couple of years if all goes well with the kennel and electronics and everything else.
Thank you very much.
So I'm of the opinion for, for apprehension, prosecution, arrests, these are invaluable to the police department in a rural community like ours, where if someone was fleeing, the scene of a home invasion or a break-in, that the dog would be able to do their job effectively in following that person's trail through our rural community. I've seen them in action. It's quite a remarkable thing to watch their handlers.
Chairperson Hardikoff, if I may.
I have one other question.
Go
Tracy.
ahead, Select Person Knapp.
I'm curious, how many actual incidents has our dog partaken in the last, 4 or 5 years, I guess?
I don't have solid numbers, and I guess, Andy, can I clarify what you mean by incidents as far as apprehensions, or what are you looking for numbers?
I'm just looking at where the dog played an active role in the event, whether it was, I know there were some instances where the dog has been sent into a residence to check on things, and I don't know any other tracking or other events like that. I just don't know the actual utilization of the dog in that regard beyond, the pleasantries I was able to have with Gypsy at different town events and things like that. And her being a wonderful dog, that's awesome. And it's a great race. So it's a great representation in the community. I'm just curious how much we've actually used her in events where her value really stands out.
So more tracking than anything, and I don't have those numbers right in front of me now, but it's more tracking than anything else. We did have a couple high profile where Gypsy was sent in for building searches to keep personnel out of harm's way. But our bread and butter is whether it's an older person with Alzheimer's or a kid getting lost in the woods. More specifically, now that we have the influx of SELT property and whatnot, we've had multiple lost individuals within the last 6 months. One of those, we were lucky enough that the county hound, which is a new dog with no real tracking history, happened to be driving by. But in any of those circumstances, we'd have been better off having a canine available, which at this point we do not, because Gypsy's been down and out of commission for several months now.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? T.A. MacGyver, you had something you needed to say?
Just two real quick things, and Andy hit on one of them, and not overshadowing the working aspect of this program, but two things that are always cited with canine programs and police departments, which can't be overlooked, are the community policing aspect. The fact that this dog goes into the schools and works with the community as a community policing asset. And number two is employee retention. It is incredibly expensive to attract and retain police officers, and programs like these, similar to the drug recognition expert program that we put a separate officer through, these types of programs are retention tools to be able to train and specialize officers to stay in Barrington, and reduce our hiring costs and increase the retention we have in a notoriously difficult field to retain employees.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Real quick question, probably a stupid question, but if we were to get a dog from, because Andy had mentioned surrounding towns, like, say if we were doing a walkthrough at the school, or we did need a dog from Dover or Rochester, we would have to pay money for that, correct?
No, we as a canine community, we as a police community take care of each other. We always have. Okay. Real good working relationship, especially with Rochester. Keith McKenzie handles a drug dog currently, and he still has a hound in his car too. Sean Bernier, chief in New Durham, has a patrol dog on board. We have for the size of the county right now, the only three patrol dogs on the street are Dover, Somersworth, and New Durham. Dover's dog is aging, quite frankly. Barco's got a few years left in him, but not long. Somersworth's dog is younger, but being able to count on Dover or Somersworth with their own call volume, not something I'd want to bank my children's safety on.
Agreed.
Okay,
Yep.
so would anyone like to make a motion that we move forward with the authorization to pursue the grant through the Working Dog Foundation?
Amy would like to do that, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I heard both, I'm sorry, George and Jim, but I have a first
Okay,
from
Jim.
Bailey and a second from Sakosha. Could we move towards a vote, beginning with a roll call vote with Select Person Air?
Air, no, and I'm stating my reason, because my understanding, the future funding and stuff, and then all the money's being thrown around, will it be there, will we be stuck with more than a burden? There's no guarantees on this funding.
Okay, so
Bailey,
Select
aye.
Person, Bailey, aye,
Nap aye.
Sakosha, aye.
and Hardikoff, aye. Motion passes. Moving on to, can I keep you on here, please, Chief Joy, the police body worn camera request for proposal advertisement?
I'm still here.
Yes. So part of our operating budget included funds to acquire the body worn cameras. And it seems that our department is ready to advertise for a proposal. They'd go out and be due July 22nd, and recommendations made to the select board at the July 27th meeting. Do we authorize the advertisement for the request for proposal for the body worn cameras?
I just have a question on that.
Go ahead.
The question that I have is around data retention and storage. I know that was about a year ago when we started talking about it from a technology end, one of the big concerns, and I didn't see anything on that, so I was hoping that could be elaborated on a little bit more.
So what specifically are you looking for, sir?
Well, Chief Joy, we had asked you to have a series of policies regarding the confidentiality and working with the technology. Have you written have you done your policy development and everything's approved and published?
Yeah, policy development is finalized, input from the county attorney's office. That's what took more time than anything. Most of the policy is actually backed by New Hampshire RSA, and it took some time to get opinions from ultimately the county attorneys on supporting what we're putting into policy. So the retention portion, as far as times and everything else, is RSA driven, as are the uses, is what we've learned.
I think Vice Chair Knapp, I think I know what you're referring to. So the primary storage tool would be cloud-based through the provider of the cameras. Yep. And then part of what a recommendation from the technology committee was to say if a case is ongoing, opposed to paying for ongoing storage beyond what is required from the RSAs, we have the capability to bring that data locally, so we're not continuing to pay cloud-based service storage fees for the years that may be entailed in a case where we need to retain that footage. So that's the plan. Both of the primary providers, camera providers, allow that functionality that was reviewed by the technology committee. So it would be that would be something that we could take advantage of, and if we wanted to have if we wanted to put that practice into policy somehow, that's certainly something that we could talk to the tech committee and the police department about, to say under what conditions are we taking that data off the cloud services, paying for data, and bringing it locally.
Right, and we have enough localized storage to be able to support that with the servers we currently have in place, and the intent to move us more to a cloud-based system as well.
Yes. That's one of the things that that Rockport specifically reviewed when we made those network improvements. And so the costly network infrastructure supports that. If anything, buying additional storage space is pennies in comparison to the network infrastructure.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns in reference to the body worn camera request for proposal advertisement?
Nope, thank you.
And would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'm sorry, I heard someone.
I think our police chief would like to register a comment.
Oh, go ahead, please, Chief Joy.
I believe select person Knapp, I don't know if this answers your question or not, but for the RFP that we're putting out, B, data storage, cloud storage obviously is preferred, and then it goes into the CGIS compatibility and how we're going to store it encrypted and how it's going to get from point A to point B. If that's what you were getting at, it is actually covered in the RFP as cloud-based as we discussed.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that and then make sure what we were talking about drawn down. We had a secure and appropriate method to back up on a localized end.
Anyone?
Yes,
go ahead, select person Air.
I'll make the motion for this, send out this, send out the advertisement.
Motion to authorize the advertisement of an RFP for body worn cameras.
As stated.
Second.
Okay, and a second from Knapp. Could I have a roll call vote beginning with select person Air?
Air aye.
Bailey, aye.
Knapp, aye.
Sakosha, aye.
Hardikoff, aye. Motion
Chairperson
carries.
Hardikoff, just briefly, and more for the community than for the board, you'll notice that the advertisement window is very small on this. That isn't typical. This is a situation where the police department has been working with the only two providers since the very beginning of this process. They both know that this is coming. They have proposals that they submitted during the information request stage, and they just need to be updated. Typically, we advertise for much longer, but these circumstances with the specific companies that we've already been working with facilitate a quicker turnaround.
Chairwoman?
Yes, go ahead, select person Air.
So we might have to waive it if we only have two vendors in. If there's only two people bidding on it, we won't have three bids, so I might have to put a motion in after the bids if we don't get three, right?
Well, I guess we'll wait and see what we get for response. Okay, so Town of Barrington services and COVID-19. I'll take the time to just say there's no new cases in the Town of Barrington. We are still doing a decent job here in the state of New Hampshire, and everywhere I'm going, I find people that are social distancing and wearing masks, and I am appreciative of that as a community member. Go ahead, TA MacGyver.
Nothing additional to add. Happy to answer any questions or concerns from board members.
No, anyone? Okay, moving on to new business, compliance calendar.
So I provided the write-up in my report. Happy to have Andy jump in at any point. This is something we talked about technology committee meeting, using the technology tools we have available to us to create a calendar of deadlines, equipment replacement, something similar to a capital improvements plan, but on a much smaller, more discrete level, to give the board and the community a view of the annual cycle of what departments are working towards, but also to kind of drive the replacement of equipment. I believe that captures what Vice Chair Knapp's intent was, but he can elaborate if he so chooses.
Yep, that's accurate. Thank you, Connor.
Okay, moving on to the new town hall update. I know that I have recently seen on social media, everyone thinks this town hall is fictitious. So Town Administrator MacGyver, if you can fill them in, please.
Yeah, so very big picture, the project's experiencing delays rooted in the final approval of the larger subdivision. So as you know, there's a subdivision of 212 acres that's been approved by the planning board for over a year at this point. And that subdivision creates 5 commercial lots, one that's earmarked for the town. And That part of one of the conditions of the approval for that subdivision is the approval from the Department of Transportation and Department of Environmental Services, their alteration of terrain for that subdivision. They're still nearly a year into it, waiting for waiting for approval from the Department of Transportation for the for the two driveways accessing 125. It's taking longer than the town expected. It's taking longer than the developer expected, but that is what the holdup is right now. I will say, if there's a silver lining, the delays have given the town an opportunity to really refine the floor plan, make sure that this is something that will suit the town's needs. Credit to the building committee for continued efforts on that. Just briefly, the timeline, March of 2019, the project was approved. March to May, the select board created the town hall building committee. May 29th, town hall building committee started meeting to develop a request for qualifications. August 29th, the request for qualifications, or 27th, was advertised. October 7th, the select board supported the building committee's recommendation to select Carino to start working on the project. They hit the ground running from October to March. They were going through all the design phases, doing some surveying out on the lot, developing the planning board proposal. On April 21st, at the second meeting, the town hall project received conditional approval from the planning board. So this is something the state law exempts municipalities from going through their own planning processes, but in Barrington practice and the town projects are treated just the same as any other commercial project in town. So went through the planning process, received conditional support. From May to now, the contractors worked with the building committee to finalize the design development. An important part of that is continuing to find cost-saving measures in the design, that the budget is constantly being refined. They're seeing good numbers in the cost estimating they're doing right now, partly based on the economy. Right now, we anticipate this fall that the original subdivision will be finalized and construction activities can commence. And the contractor believes that it's still a seven-month construction project, irregardless of when construction activities begin. So we're targeting right now late spring, early summer of 2021 for project completion. But again, that depends in large part on the full approval of the original subdivision, the larger subdivision. Oh, Tracy, you're muted.
Select person Air.
I made an observation, Connor. Basically, you said 212 acres being developed. To make it more transparent, only half of it's going to be developed. It's conservation subdivision. There's over 30 acres of prime orchard lands there, perfect farmland that will be open that is not going to be developed. So we don't hear 212 being developed. Not all of it is being developed.
Very good.
Good point.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the update for the town hall? It's real, folks.
It is. These things take time, and the select board formulating the design build process ahead of the 2019 vote. I think it's something that the select board determined was in the best interest of the town, and absolutely the community agreed by supporting the project. Design build projects inherently take longer because the design phase starts after approval is received, opposed to taking a ready to build project to voters. And so it's certainly a project that is expected to take a little longer anyways. But that being said, there have been delays outside of our control delaying the project further. Which brings me to a second topic, which I want to have a discussion with the board about and bring the community up to speed as well. So as you know, we rent the facility we're in right here. We have since 2011 at 333 Califf Highway. That lease that was originally entered in 2011 has been renewed annually. So starting last year for the 2019 renewal, I knew the project would take longer than the end of July of this year. I looked with the landlords to get a 1-year lease with options for extensions, but they just wanted to go with a regular 1-year lease. In October, I met with the landlords to discuss the termination expectations for exiting this lease for budget purposes. As you remember, during the budget process, trying to make sure that we had funds in the budget to leave this building with the expectation that we would be leaving the building this year. Obviously, didn't expect that the delays would be over a year.
Is now exiting.
But that's where we are right now. So to my surprise, the landlord's interpretation of the lease, they made clear that it's their expectation
Is now exiting.
that the parking lot will be completely repaved, which is approximately a $30,000 cost item. That 4 of the 6 furnaces in the building will be replaced, which is estimated at $10,000 to $15,000. It's important to note that while the condensers weren't asked to be replaced because of the old style refrigerant, we couldn't replace the furnaces without replacing the condensers. And the third primary expectation of the landlord's interpretation of the lease is to remove all of the alterations
Is now joining.
to the property, returning the property to the original condition, which again is estimated at about $10,000 to $15,000. So those are 3 primary differences in expectation, differences in understanding of the lease terms. So the board has received a copy of this, but for the community's benefit. So again, this is the same lease. It's available on the town's website. This is the same lease the town has been in since 2011. So for each one of those expectations, I just want to read a couple of quotes from the lease, which underscore the town's perspective and interpretation of the lease. So regarding the alterations and additions, when we moved into this building, it was a vacant building. Portions of the building were unfinished that the landlord finished, but there's certain work that the town did making improvements to the building, but to suit the needs of the different departments. So regarding those alterations and additions, Article 8 in the lease contemplates those adjustments and states that those improvements which are not structural in nature may be removed by the tenant. Emphasis on may, and that additionally all alterations and improvements may, in the tenant's sole discretion, be removed from the premises. So the lease makes it clear that it's at the town's option, that these additions and alterations are the town's property, and it's at the town's option whether or not those are removed. And so it's the town's opinion that these are improvements to the property and would be costly and destructive to remove, especially returning the property to original condition, given some of the electrical that was brought into the additions and things like that. So that's the costly component of that. Second is the paving. So the lease is very brief regarding the maintenance of the parking area. But this is in Article 9, and Article 9 talks about maintenance and repair responsibilities. And so 9.2b says damage caused by snow plows, delivery trucks, or other traffic of any kind is the town's responsible for maintaining and repairing. And further, in section D, it specifies that repair shall be at least equal in material workmanship to the items being repaired. So first, the idea that the parking lot has to be repaved is inconsistent with the terms of the lease, because repairing damage is completely different than replacing a parking lot that is at the end of its useful life at 10 years old. Most of the parking area only ever had a binder course on it and wasn't constructed properly to begin with. So the wear and tear that the parking area is experiencing is expected at its age, at its useful life. And that second point where it talks about shall be at least equal in material and workmanship to the item being repaired. So that contemplates wear and tear. So that says that if you're fixing something, it has to match the existing condition. So if there were damage caused by trucks, snow plows, or other traffic, that repair would be done in a manner consistent with the existing condition of the pavement, which is deteriorating. And so finally is the furnace situation. So this was a complete surprise to the town. The town has been under contract with Siemens to maintain these furnaces the entire term of the lease, and they make biannual visits. All of the furnaces have been functional. We've only had one service call on the furnaces since we've been in the building. So again, in Article 9, the responsibilities of the town are routine and regular maintenance of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in good order and condition. So again, there's been routine and regular maintenance, and we have the maintenance records to show it. And in good order and condition, the units are functional. So these units are 14 years old, and there's some corrosion where the copper meets the aluminum for the condenser. Those are naturally corrosive materials, and there's some corrosion, not rendering the systems useless, but certainly wear given their age. And so the expectation that the town would replace 4 of the 6 of these furnaces is inconsistent with the terms of the lease. We've met our requirements as presented in the lease, and replacing them would be an undue cost to the town, and certainly isn't required. So those just highlight the town's position on those 3 inconsistencies in interpretation. So in March of this year, I requested a 1-year extension with the landlords starting in August. The landlords responded with an addendum to the lease, which takes the 3 expectations that are inconsistent with the town's review of the lease and makes it clear that and requires the town to do those 3 things: repave the parking lot, replace the furnaces, and remove all of the additions and alterations at that $50,000 or more price. So the town, recognizing the disagreement and different interpretation of the lease, requested that both parties participate in mediation to resolve the issues, continue the lease, and get in front of a neutral third party to review the situation and find a conclusion. That request was denied, and in response, the landlords provided 3 options. The first option is to sign the addendum and continue a 1-year lease in the facility. And again, rough estimates, the only thing we have a good quote on is the pavement replacement, but rough estimates, it'll be over a $50,000 cost impact for the town to meet those requirements. The second option was to continue the current lease under the same terms, but the rent would increase by 88%. So from $3,400 a month to $6,400 a month, which isn't budgeted and would have undue financial impact to the town. And the third option was to move out at the end of the lease. And so it's important, and I appreciate the board's time to kind of go through the process and discuss some of the details publicly for the board and the community's benefit. So unfortunately, this puts the board in a tough position. And what I'm looking for from you right now is a choice. We've exhausted all of our options for pursuing an extension to the lease, and essentially have an ultimatum from the landlord with 3 options. And so I'm looking for direction from the board on how to proceed with those 3 options.
I'm of the opinion, if I'm correct in reference to this, that one of the owners of the property also is contracted with the town for other resources.
That's correct.
I think for purposes of reputation and building that we should consider this discussion in a non-public and then come out of non-public.
Okay.
Does everyone on the board agree with that course of action?
I agree with that. Sorry, it took me a bit to unmute here.
George, I'm sorry, did you say you agree with that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, and Select Person Sakosha?
He's muted.
Yes.
Okay, so let's hold that for non-public. 2020 tax deeding is up next, and I'm sorry to continue to move everyone forward, but this is going to be a very long meeting given the amount of material.
Absolutely. So the information, all the details are in your packet. I won't bore you with it. Essentially, the government the state turned off evictions and tax deeding and recently turned it back on. Doesn't impact what we do at all. I wanted to give the
Lindsay Maziarz.
Is
wanted
now
to give-
exiting.
Excuse me, I wanted to give the board just the schedule for the tax deeding process this year. So the deed date when the select board deeds properties that have an outstanding balance of more than 3 years is scheduled for August 27th. So on the July 27th meeting, our next meeting, the select board will be presented with a preliminary list. And you remember from years past, this list will have a lot more properties on it than we'll see in that last week because people wait until the last minute to clear these things up. And so the list will be long. What we'll ask for the board, and the list will be updated, but at the August 10th meeting, we intend to finalize the list of any deed waivers the select board is interested in issuing. So there's criteria allowing the select board to issue deed waivers, contamination, bankruptcy. These are examples of situations where the select board would issue a deed waiver. So right now, and again, we're hoping to finalize that at the meeting on August 10th. And if we have any last minute changes, we could address it at the August 24th meeting prior to the deed date on August 27th. So currently there are 47 properties in Barrington eligible for tax deeding, meaning that they have an outstanding lien balance on their 2017 lien. 6 properties at current count will require a deed waiver due to bankruptcy or contamination. About 35 properties are on the list to be deeded every year and come in, in the last week to pay up their outstanding lien, so the properties aren't deeded. That's expected this year, although may be impacted by the economy. And right now, by the tax collector's count, there are 6 properties that have been delinquent on their taxes or their payment plans and would be deeded on August 27th. So I'm here to give you that list and ask you if there's any specific information the board would like to have in addition to the list and the payment history for consideration prior to making a decision on August 10th.
I don't have any other requirements.
Sounds good to me.
Great. So we'll present it the same as years prior. You'll get a first glimpse of the list on July 27th. It'll be updated for August 10th with a specific request for decisions at the August 10th meeting. So if you did have questions about specific properties, review the list for the July 27th meeting, and we'll have a few weeks to get you answers.
Okay. Next up is Stonehouse Pond trash. I'll tell you all, I saw the picture and sent it to Connor and said, what are we going to do? Go ahead, Connor.
So we got a little glimpse of this earlier on in the meeting. So essentially there are a lot of stakeholders. The primary stakeholders are Fish and Game because they own the property that Stonehouse Pond access. It's one of the properties that they maintain for fishing from the shore and from boats. Contrary to popular belief, it's actually a property that's restricted from swimming. Fish and Game only visits the property once a week, and they don't have the resources for more enforcement action to keep people from swimming there. The second primary stakeholder is Southeast Land Trust, who owns the property all around Stonehouse Pond that comprises Stonehouse Forest and their trail network. So both organizations got back to me immediately. They share the goal to resolve this problem. Both organizations have some ideas, but made it clear that they'd be more than happy to have the town's support in any way that we could provide it. So the Conservation Commission and the Trails Committee have this as an agenda item on their upcoming meetings, and will be strategizing ways that they can help, or maybe setting up a meeting with the stakeholders to kind of brainstorm through some of the ideas that have come about. The problem is, build it and they will come. We have a good thing here, a beautiful nature preserve with a beautiful pond and good fishing. And so the more folks hear about that and share the goodness that we have, the more people will be down there. And, Fish and Game recognized that the issues have been increasing since the expansion of the hiking trails. I think there's some truth to the fact that the folks bringing and leaving trash there probably aren't the same folks that are hiking throughout the trail network. It's probably the folks that are down there swimming. A lot of the trash is pretty consistent with that. Again, there's a lot at play. I wanted to let the board know that the concerns raised to you by constituents are being considered. The Conservation Commission and Trails Committee are going to kind of take lead and present any recommendations to the select board on how the town could be involved or what changes could be made there. One of the changes that was recommended was to bring the gate, the fishing game gate, down to where the trailhead parking area is, about halfway down that road, which would require anybody that goes down to the pond to walk that last, probably half mile. And so if, you figure if the same group of people are so lazy to leave their trash behind, they're probably so lazy that they're not going to walk a half mile to a pond to leave their trash behind. So that was one idea that was tossed around. Others are considered. So that's the update. If you have questions or concerns, let me know. But the Conservation Commission and Trails Committee are going to review it.
Okay, select person Air, you had a comment?
There should be some accountability. If someone's gonna carry it in, they can carry it out. It's not everyone's job to babysit them. If they don't have enough respect for that, they shouldn't be going in there at all, in my book.
Well, I think this was an influx from the COVID and everybody's like, oh, where can we hike locally? So, I mean, it really hasn't been an issue in the past that I've known of. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody else has heard of anything, but I haven't.
Yeah, I do think it's a result of COVID and people needing to get outside. And let's just hope when the world returns to normal, so does the usage of the property.
Yeah, because that would suck to haul in kayaks or, stuff like that. And
Yep.
Mile away.
Or even a picnic lunch that far for sure. The next up on the agenda is the Swains Lake Dam drawdown plan. Town Administrator MacGyver, do you want to talk about that?
Yep, I'll take lead and then Mark can fill in the blanks. So essentially, your road agent is also the dam monitor. And when Mark took over that role last year, he identified a few deficiencies with the entire process. First deficiency was some deferred maintenance on the concrete of the spillway. That's scheduled to be repaired. It was properly budgeted. We have that programmed for, I believe, in October once the lake level is lowered. So that's a deficiency that's going to be taken care of. Another pretty significant deficiency is the culverts that run under the Lakeside Oaks Drive there. So the ability to draw down the lake is directly related to the deteriorating condition of those culverts. So we can only draw down so much water for fear of washing out those culverts in the road at that point. So we're going through the process to develop a plan to be able to repair those. Right now, we don't have easements necessary. That's one of the things that's taking some time. The board will certainly be involved once we get the pieces in place where it's an option we can pursue, but that's a pretty significant deficiency. The last thing, and this is a pretty important one, one, because it's been in the deficiency reports that the State Dam Bureau does, but second, because this is a really big item near and dear to the hearts of the folks that live on the lake. So there's no codified drawdown plan for Swains Lake for seasonal drawdown, for emergency drawdown, flood drawdown, anything. And so that leaves a big level of unpredictability for the folks that live on the lake. The Lake Association has been pushing for something codified, and the infrastructure that we have in the sensitive nature that it is would really benefit from a drawdown plan. So Mark got with a couple of engineers that do this work. We reached out to everybody that submitted for the work on Richardson Pond Dam. And so we received 2 proposals back, very similar scope, to essentially develop that drawdown plan that this dam doesn't have, that DES wants to see. So I want to be clear, this isn't something that was properly budgeted. We didn't put money in the budget specifically to do this. We're doing the dam gate repairs for about half of what was budgeted. And if we went forward with the proposed dam drawdown plan, we would be overspending that budget line by about $3,400. It's not significant. It would be more than made up for in other parts of the budget, and it's a really important item. So we're looking for board support. Mark can certainly answer any questions or fill in any blanks. Of the two proposals we received, I attached both of them. We're simply requesting support with the low bidder. They both seem competent and proposed a similar scope.
It's my understanding what you're asking is to allow the spend down to go over by $3,430. Where is the money coming from?
So again, with a bottom line budget, it really could come from anywhere. If you wanted a specific spot for that money to be earmarked or transferred, the incident fund has tens of thousands of dollars which are planned to go unspent. But there's also money, cost savings that Mark has found just inside the highway department that could make up that difference.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, anyone wishing to make a motion authorizing the over expenditure for the town dams gate repair operating budget line in order to have a drawdown plan developed?
I'll make that motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
And second by Bailey. Roll call vote beginning with select person Air, please.
Air aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha, aye.
And Hardikoff, aye. Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Moving on to waiving the highway billing policy for film material at the cemetery. Everyone's read this. And are there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding allowing a waiver for billing so we could move Phil over to the cemetery? Questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, select person Air.
Is it gonna be the fill, the limited use, or is this to be loom?
Mark,
Mark
is it going to be?
material specifically, but it won't be limited reuse soils.
It won't be limited to reused soils.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and is there a second?
Bailey seconds.
Okay, roll call vote beginning with select person Air.
Air aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha, aye.
And Hardikoff, aye. Thank you for letting us know that that was needed. Delinquent first half property taxes. This was an interesting read, TA MacGyver.
Yeah, so I think it's important to have this conversation briefly just in the community forum. I know there's some numbers. I'll try to move through it efficiently. I've been updating the board on the financial measures that we've been monitoring for the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the town. That they're very important for budget purposes, for tax rate purposes, and so it's something that we're paying very close attention to. One of the big benchmarks we are interested in is to see what kind of response rate we receive to the first half tax bills. And so we have good data that tells us what we should expect to collect.
Is now exiting.
Based on really 8 data that we have in our system. And so the typical response rate or delinquency rate is what we call it is 5%. And so that means of the entire tax warrant that we send out by dollar value, 5% of that isn't collected by the due date. Now it's important to keep in mind that by the end of the second due date, which is typically in December, there's 6 months where those property taxes are delinquent before they turn into a lien that's placed on somebody's property. And so between the time that the tax bills come due and it's transferred into a lien, that delinquency typically drops to about 1.5%, meaning that a lot of those folks that don't pay their tax bills on time end up paying before it turns into a lien. So this year, our tax bill due date for the first half was July 6th. And what we experienced was the delinquency rate was 7.8%. And so that was over a 50% increase in the delinquency rate. Now, by dollar figures, I showed you the warrant was almost 13 million. And at the day after the due date, we had 1 million that was outstanding, that was delinquent. And so that one of the reasons that's very important to monitor and track is in Barrington, we're actually pretty lucky because our delinquency rate is very low. The state average is just over 10%, and some communities are up into 30-35% in a regular year. And so communities across the state are experiencing higher delinquency rates right now. And if we didn't have the fund balance that we have right now, we would have to be borrowing money. And a lot of communities across the state are having to borrow money because if people don't pay their property tax bills, municipalities don't have cash on hand to continue paying the schools, to continue paying their bills. And so the select board's policy of setting the midpoint of that range of 12.5% for unassigned fund balance is absolutely underscored. The importance of that is underscored by the situation we're in right now. So Barrington is still in a comfortable financial position, even with an increased delinquency, because we have that unassigned fund balance. Now, if this economic impact were to continue for a number of years, that will dry up and we'll be in the same boat needing to borrow money. So again, it's not significant right now to the point where we would have to borrow money or we're in dire straits for paying our bills. But that's because of the select board's policy and commitment to keeping that balance high. So I wanted to note that the interest rate on delinquent taxes is 8%. So, certainly a pretty steep penalty for not paying your taxes on time. And so we'll continue to monitor this. I'll be happy to provide the board additional updates, especially with the second half tax bill, to see if we see that trend continuing or if it's something that is getting better or worse. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you for the update. Select Person Air, before I call on you, I just want to point out too, for homeowners and renters in the town of Barrington, the state has a special fund happening right now for rental costs and for mortgages in amounts up to $2,500 through our Community Action Program of Stratford County, which is located in both Dover and Rochester offices. And you can go online to Community Action Program for Stratford County and apply online for relief and help for up to $2,500 per household. And that may help relieve some stress on some households that may be experiencing income loss at this time. Go ahead, Select Person Air.
I don't know. I don't sound negative or stuff, but I just got a feeling in my gut it's gonna double next tax things and stuff. I don't see us jumping right out of this. So
okay.
I'm feeling I can't get rid of it. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns in reference to the information? Again, thank you for sharing it in detail. It's important for us to know what we're up against. If there are no other questions, comments, or concerns, I'll move on to Fire EMS Dispatch Contract. You're being asked to consider approving a 3-year contract with UNH for dispatch services. It appears that from last year to this year, there's been about a $1,600 reduction, and that would lock in the contract for 3 years. Questions, comments, concerns?
I'll motion it.
Oh, hang on, Select Person Air.
I still want to get in on new business.
I know, I have you after this. Can we focus on this issue so we can move through the agenda?
I'll second Andy's motion.
I have a first and a second. Any questions, comments, or concerns before we move to roll call? No. Starting with Select Person Air, could I have a roll call vote, please, to consider?
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosh, aye.
And Hardikoff, aye, to consider approving a 3-year contract with UNH for dispatch services. Thank you, Rick, for your information on that. Chief, we appreciate it. We appreciate the cost savings. Okay, up next is new business for Select Person Air in reference to roads. You are on, Select Person Air.
Well, I want to tag this onto Province Road as a side detour and stuff. We need to spend the money and we need signage and stuff on it. I made observation last week at that accident and stuff. And personally, accidents and roads being shut off does not affect me. Because in the wintertime, I'm diverting all over many towns and stuff, and I know how to get around and get through opposite ways. I grew up here all my life. But basically, I made I turned around, went back, and I went to Dover. I went down through there, and I made observation. You just can't say, you put up a detour, bang, right, people get, the GPSs don't work and stuff. And I saw 12 people go down a dead end cul-de-sac. They didn't have a clue. So we need somehow to do signage and stuff because these accidents aren't going to stop. I hate to say it. And I really support improving Province Road, New Road. and we're doing signage because the road agent touched on it, that the intersection are gonna get worse. So the more signage, the better somehow.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Select Person Air. Next up is Select Person Reports. Beginning, why don't we start in alphabetical order? Select Person Air, do you have a report out?
No.
Okay.
Tomorrow is, well, no, Wednesday is school board.
Okay. Select Person Bailey?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to, first of all, comment to Connor is that some of the issues that I had requested information on were provided. I want to thank him for that. The next, excuse me, is we had talked about, there's been some mention of a chemical sites list. Has that list been formulated?
Can you clarify that?
Just like the sites for the water we just discussed earlier, we have some chemical sites that are shut down where you can't drill, can't do anything. And forgive me for the road name.
Hall Road?
Yeah, the Hall Road. Yeah.
Tibbetts?
Yeah, Tibbetts is another one. So did we get that list put together, or are they still working on it? That's my only question.
Are you talking about for the tax deeded properties?
No, just for the list of all the chemical sites that we have to be aware of so that we don't pass anything here in the board for private road or anything else of that nature, at least so we all have a list of what those sites are, where the sites are.
The list is easy. The list is short. We have one Superfund site in Barrington. It's on Tibbetts Road, and it's monitored. We just received our 5-year update last year.
Thank you very much. My next.
Hang on, Select Person Air. Report outs. Are you done, Select Person Bailey?
No, I am not. I just,
okay.
I'm waiting on the report from the chief on the cemetery software update. Is he using that program or not? That's my only question. And warranty. The other issue is that, as everybody knows, as the chair had alluded to earlier tonight, is places for individuals that want to swim and what have you. And I have reviewed the warranty easement deed that was provided to me by Suzanne several years ago, and not being able to understand legalese, there is some language in there that talks about providing some areas for the town residents to enjoy the swimming. And I would just ask that with the chair's permission, or the chair's consideration, I should say, to have somebody look into this. And also at the same time, there's a boat ramp on one side that's not official, but just the way that the warranty deed is written and the way that the items that are supposed to be provided for the residents of the town, I'd like to have that reviewed to see where we can go to have a place to swim and a few other items.
Okay. And George, did you want to do a report out? We had a co-meeting of the library group and the select board. Did you want to do a report out on that?
I did not go to that, Madam Chair. I did not.
No, we attended virtually.
I don't think I did.
Oh, I can do the report out if you'd like.
Okay, that would be fine. And with the ZBA, that's coming up for a meeting, and so there's nothing to report on that.
Okay, very good. Who's next alphabetically? Vice Chair now.
I am. So the planning board met this past week. We reviewed, we had a conversation around the facilities and utilities chapter of the master plan. And there was a fair amount of stuff that was outdated that needed. So Jeff Brand is working with Marcia and with the Stratford Regional Planning Commission to get a draft updated version of that to come back before the board. Also, we had a review of a lot line adjustment for Miller Falls Realty LLC, Albert Estes, and went through that as well as the conditional use permit. We had a lot line adjustment for Wanda Lee and Richard A. Walker Jr. on a property of theirs that just had an approval for a development on part of the lot, and then there's a lot line adjustment to expand part of the existing lot. And then there was also a lot line adjustment for it was owners James A. Morrison, Rebecca A. Andrews, Lisa J. LaBelle, and Nicholas Donovan. And that lot line adjustment was also approved. So that's the planning board meeting.
Anything else to report out, Vice Chair Knapp?
The technology committee or the building committee has a meeting Wednesday morning, and I believe that is it. Meeting, so only 3 in the last week and a half.
Okay, that's and then I see you, select person Air. I'm going to have select person Sakosha report out. I'll report out, and then we'll go to you. Go ahead, Jim.
So they're currently focusing on virtual programming as well as working with the schools on fall programming, such as before and after school care and fall soccer, all that stuff that's coming up. That's what they're working on.
Okay, great. That was the Rec Commission report out. So two meetings I've sat through this month, and actually did not sit through, but I'll give you the summation of it. The transfer station they had a quick meeting today to go over details of a questionnaire, kind of Survey Monkey thing that will be going out to the townspeople. But they wanted to get
exiting.
They wanted to get details together of, potential costs of large projects before they even addressed the what would you like in an ideal world type of conversations. So the transfer station was working on that questionnaire. And then Erin put together an excellent recycling easy 2-page flyer so that people can really understand how we keep recycling clean, reduce our costs, and do best for the environment while handling trash. So those were transfer station. As far as the library co-committee meeting we had, it was to discuss the future of the library build and whether to present this year or the next year. And so the library committee met with the select board members to talk about what that may look like and what we know we're up against financially as a town in dealing with our budget going forward this year. But also what their progress has been on some great grant opportunities that they have discovered, and they'll be making a decision whether to present for this year or for the following year, the new library build again. I think that was kind of a summation of it. And then Select Person Air, you wanted to speak.
FYI, there's another super fun site, butts Barrington, but it's not in Barrington. It's on Toland Road.
That is true.
Beautiful, beautiful blueberries. If you ever want to go for a walk.
Do they glow? I'm just kidding. Okay. This is for the next section of public comment. Public comment is a total of 15 minutes, limited to 3 minutes per person. And I am going to ask for non-public for purposes of building and reputation after that. Public comment, if you'd like to speak, you can, there's a little hand on your screen, or you can send a quick email to administration@barrington.newhampshire.gov, or you can call 664-0146.
George Bailey has a public comment.
Go ahead, George. 3 minutes, sir.
I won't need that long. I want to apologize, Madam Chair. I just didn't remember that I was at that meeting. I just want you to know that. I understand you're pushing. Thank you, and I apologize to the board.
That's okay. And that only took 11 seconds. Any other public comments? We can have up to 4 more for a total of 15 minutes. Erin Paradise has her hand up.
Yes.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Erin.
I just want to touch base that I know that people think that because of COVID, there's been an influx of trash at Stonehouse. This is not true. This has been an ongoing problem that has just kind of been escalated because of the number of people that are now visiting. But it has always been an ongoing problem that there has been trash left behind, only because I have a specific family member who religiously fishes over there. So I hear about it all the time. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other public comments? We have 9 more minutes. Anyone? I'm going to give it a half a minute. And if nobody has public comment, I will make a motion to move to non-public for purposes of property and reputation.
So personnel, reputation, and legal would be
sorry.
Yeah, it's
all
okay.
of those. Thank you.
Yeah. Personnel, reputation, and legal.
And I'm going to give it 13 more seconds. Any other hands being raised? Any emails coming your way, Town Administrator MacGyver?
No, nothing. And for all the board members, once we do get out of public session, you'll have a link in your inbox to the non-public session to join in. And we will come back to the public session after non-public to close out and make any announcements we need to.
Could I get a roll call vote to enter non-public, please, starting with Select Person Air? Thank you.
Bailey, aye.
Thank you.
Nap, aye.
Thank you. Thank you. And Hardikoff, aye. I'll see you all over in non-public.
Can you email me?
It's in your inbox.
It's in your inbox.
If I just stay on this site, I'll catch you when you come back, right?
Absolutely, sir. Want to kiss me before I go on this meeting?
No.
Oh, somebody heard that.
Jim did.
Oh, I guess I didn't exit the meeting properly. I gotta know when I tried to kiss my husband goodnight. See what I'm up against? Oh.
We're that close yet so far.
Tracy and Dan are both still in the other meeting.
I'm here.
Hey, Andy.
I'm here.
Hey, George. I'm gonna run to the bathroom. Give me 90 seconds.
Get water.
TMI.
Oh, sorry. Did you guys all hear me talking about the dog doing its duty too?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, take care. Thank you. I hope you're running for office. Talk to you later.
Was that Matt?
If anybody can hear me, Connor there who's handling it. I just got a phone call from outside and they can still hear us talking in non-public.
Oh.
So somebody's still logged in or not muted.
I shut off.
Yeah, I exited the meeting.
I went to my new link.
I'm closing out all my windows right now, just in case.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same.
It shows that Dan and George are still logged into this old meeting.
No, that's what George said.
George.
Bailey.
George is still in the meeting.
I'm trying to get out
Oh,
now.
he
I
had a
can't.
couple open it probably.
That's right.
I'm gonna kick George out of.
is now exiting.
Mark Morrow.
Is now exiting.
I'm hot.
Oh, I had you muted.
I said I'm hot.
Oh.
I'm not in the air conditioning in this office.
This has been a riveting 3.5 hours. Go ahead, TA MacGyver.
Do we have everybody back?
Yeah.
George,
Dan?
Andy, myself, Jim. I'm looking at Dan, and he could be on a bio break.
Okay. So we have a quorum of the board.
You do.
So in non-public, the board decided that it was in the town's best interest to either renew the current lease at the rented town hall under the current terms or exit the lease under the current town hall within 30 days of the lease expiring. So we'll pursue that option and move forward and make sure that the community is kept apprised to the decisions made. Staff will, if the town does not stay in this town hall, staff will finalize the plan and communicate that with the public as efficiently as possible. So that's all we have for the meeting. Be looking for a motion to seal the non-public minutes and to adjourn.
I'd make a motion to seal the minutes from indefinitely.
Second.
Here,
Okay.
Bailey,
Roll
aye.
call vote.
is Jim around?
We're up to Knapp.
Nap aye.
Select person Sakosha, you there?
I was muted. Skoshai.
Okay, and Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all. That was a very long 3.5 hours, and you got a lot done. I appreciate everybody's help.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Motion to
Have a
adjourn.
wonderful night.
Hold on. Motion to
What,
adjourn?
Dan?
A
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion- Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Here, I go first.
All right, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Aye.
Aye.